Today I'm going to talk about the science of compassion-based meditation, more from a Western standpoint, specifically from America. I know that many of you have a lot of experience related to compassion, and in some ways I feel like a novice up here giving this presentation, so I look forward to all the things that you're going to teach me over the next few days. So we're going to talk about, over the next hour, compassion and its benefits. I will probably go pretty quickly through this because over the last day we've talked about this quite a bit. I'm also going to talk about something that you may or may not heard about called cognitively based compassion training, which is based on the Lojong tradition. And then I'm going to talk about the evidence or the research that we've done to support compassion meditation, specifically what I'm calling CBCT, as a way that we're using this to promote mental health and well-being. I loved this quote from the Dalai Lama. I recently found this, and he said, "When I heard scientists say they had evidence that basic human nature is compassionate, I thought there's real hope." This is one definition of compassion, but what I have also included on here are synonyms, at least in America, that we tend to think about when we think about compassion. These are not the same as compassion, but they are related. So cultivating compassion actually has been talked about for quite some time, and Charles Darwin, who probably was, what he's known for, survival of the fittest, actually did talk about compassion and the need to be compassionate for others. That was quite unexpected. We're going to keep moving right where I left off. So I realize that this slide is not translated from Charles Darwin from The Descent of Man, so I'm going to go ahead and read it. As man advances in civilization and small tribes are united into larger communities, the simplest reason will tell each individual that he ought to extend his social instinct and sympathies to all the members of the same nation. Though personally unknown to him, this point being once reached, there is only an artificial barrier to prevent his sympathies extending to the men of all nations and races. Our sympathies becoming more tender and more widely diffused until they are extended to all sentient beings. So this is from Charles Darwin, who recognized how important it was to extend compassion, and there were artificial barriers that are preventing us from doing that. And I want to tell you just a little story about these monkeys. Franz de Waal, who is a primatologist at Emory, studies monkeys and has written several books. And he believes that we're biologically hardwired for compassion. He talks about in his book an experiment in which a monkey was offered a reward. The monkey had the option of also giving the reward to another monkey. He only gave the reward to a monkey if the monkey was known to him. So thinking about compassion, that's what at least I have issues or an experience in which I have to really focus and really train to be able to extend compassion outside of those that are within my in-group. And this is what we're seeing biologically in some of the experiments to date. And this quote has already been used, so I'm going to keep going. So there's several benefits of compassion. Some we've talked about, some we have not. But science supports that compassion is associated with lower depression, anxiety, and stress. And these are mental health problems in the Western psychology and in the United States. It's actually a really big problem in the United States. About 10% of young adults suffer from depression. people that practice compassion overall have overall better well-being, and they have a better ability to cope with illnesses and are more engaged in behaviors that promote self-care for their own health. For example, what we found is that people that practice self-compassion tend to do things like take their medicine and do healthy behaviors that will better their health and well-being. What we're also beginning to see is that self-regulation, or something called emotional regulation, appears to be an important link that links right up with compassion that leads to better health. So can we cultivate compassion? Numerous studies say yes. I think most people in the room would definitely say yes. Otherwise, you wouldn't probably be interested or here. So in the United States and in Western psychology, compassion meditation goes by several different names, and I'm just pointing out compassion meditation and loving kindness meditation I see used a lot in the scientific literature. But what I'm really going to focus on today, and probably what I know the very best or the most about, would be the cognitively based compassion training. By no means am I an expert. I'm still training myself, but that's where I'm going to focus today. So this is out of the Emory-Tibetan Partnership and was created by Dr. Nagy. And Dr. Nagy was a former monk, and he actually was at Drepung Monastery. And he is now on faculty at Emory, and he has created something called the Emory-Tibetan Science Initiative, which some of you may or may not know about. And the idea is to bridge between what we think are two complementary systems, which is the Tibetan monastics and the scientists, so we can contribute to the next discoveries in science that link the mind and the body. Also part of this is something called cognitively based compassion training, which from here on out, I'm just going to use CBCT because it's a long word. So this is an approach that Dr. Nagy has translated. So people in America, and actually around the world now, but are not Buddhists, can benefit from the practice, and that they can enjoy the benefits of well-being and a healthy mind and body. So this is drawn from Lojong, and it was initially started at Emory University, and that is where I am from. This taps into the biologically given potential and the compassion that we have for all of us that is already in. The seeds of compassion are already in all of us. So the idea is that CBCT exercises our ability to respond with compassion and leads to a more intuitive and constructive encounters with suffering, whether ourselves or others. And in America, a lot of what I have seen are people will approach suffering but kind of don't know what to do about it, and they stay in empathy but are not really able to extend compassion outside of people in their in-group. And so that's what this practice also focuses on, is it helps to train so you have a deliberate effort to expand the capacity beyond the limits of compassion outside of our loved ones and those that are in our in-group to everyone. There are 6 modules to CBCT. And just about a week and a half ago, Dr. Nagy says that we now have 7 modules, but really the first module is the foundational module called the Nurturing Moment. And the modules are worked through in this order, as you can see the names of the 6 modules, with the last module being Empathy and Engaged Compassion. Dr. Nagy has conceptualized this as a triple focus: the inner focus, outer focus, and other focus, which is necessary for flourishing. In each of the modules, he has envisioned to be situated in either one of these 3 domains, which lead to flourishing. So we think that compassion actually buffers stress and stress-related illnesses. So we have stress and we have our troubles, and then we have this chronic feeling of like we're in danger. And evolutionarily, we were in danger for things like tigers coming at us. That is not the issue anymore. Stress, at least in America, may be dealing with your boss or a difficult person, a relational strain. And when you have some stress is normal, but when you have chronic stress, that this wears on the body. And this does things like cause inflammation, and it causes both the body and the brain to have problems. And as you can see, one of those being depression, and the other are chronic diseases like heart disease, diabetes, cancer, dementia, and this goes both ways. People that have depression are more likely to develop a chronic illness. Those that have a chronic illness are more likely to develop depression. There is an obvious link between the mind and the body. So the idea is compassion meditation will act upon that to buffer the effect of stress. So we start out at CBCT with the nurturing moment. And this is a time in which you, as you start the practice, obviously you close your eyes and it is a meditative practice, but you think about a time in which you felt safe, secure, and you felt nurtured by someone. And you rest in this feeling of feeling safe, secure, and nurtured. The idea is that you begin to develop an appreciation and a motivation to, just as you have benefited from compassion from others, that you would want to extend that to other people. The other thing from a scientific standpoint is this looks a lot to me like psychological priming for for your comfort, for benefit, for to kind of get your mind in the direction of positivity is really what I'm trying to say. So CBCT has been used in foster care, children in foster care, women with breast cancer, several studies in medical students. That's the study that Geshe-la, or the piece that Geshe-la was talking about yesterday in the Washington Post. College students and individuals that what we say are suicide attempters or try to take their own life. The studies thus far have looked at 3 different domains, something called psychoneuroimmunology, and this is the effect of the immune system or the immune system's response to stress. And the immune system helps to keep your body in check and be free from disease. And it's almost like a surveillance and monitoring. And what happens is when you're under stress, you get this in what we call an inflammatory response, and there's markers in the blood that show that. We've also have something called neuroimaging, and we've been able to look at people's brains under fMRI scanners to see what's going on. And we have had some studies using that technology. We also have done biobehavioral studies, which this is the interaction of behavior and biological processes. So the reason why I bring this up is because there's different types of evidence that we're getting from different studies. This is the study with college students, and what I want you to know about this study, I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty parts about this study, but I just told you about the inflammation of the body and the immune system and how that gets activated. And what we're seeing here is after people did CBCT, college students, that they recovered from stress quicker, that actually the cortisol, which is the stress hormone, it rose as it should be, but they recovered much quicker for people that had high CBCT practice time versus people that had low. The same thing with IL-6, which is a marker of inflammation. What we saw is a divergence for people that practiced a lot versus people that didn't practice as much, that they had less of a blunted response of an increase in IL-6, which is again a marker of stress in the blood from the immune system. Here's another study, kids with foster care. They had lower inflammation after CBCT, high practice versus low practice, and the low practice is on the left. You can see there's a high bar there. What that means is that there's more inflammation. So you can see that practice made a difference here. And the children also reported higher levels of hope if they practiced more. Here is what I'm talking about with the fMRI images. And this is a study of college students in which they did CBCT. In the control group, they didn't do CBCT. They did what we call usual care, meaning doing their daily activities, not necessarily engaged in meditation. And what they found is that their people's ability, after doing CBCT, they were better able to read other people's facial expressions and emotional expressions more accurately. And I believe that this contributes to our ability to connect with others and build those relationships. And being responsive, when you're going to be empathetic to another person, you have to be attuned to what they're going through. And a lot of times that is displayed on the face, and so that is really important to be able to recognize this. People that are depressed have problems reading facial expressions, and they tend to focus on negative facial expressions longer than, or spend more time gazing at negative or unhappy facial expressions than more positive or happy expressions. This is the study of African American women that completed CBCT, and these are the women that unfortunately had tried to take their own life. What we found with these individuals is that there was a reduction in self-criticism. We talked about how when you don't practice self-compassion, that you can be beating yourself up or being really hard on yourself, and that seems to be a key piece when people are depressed, that it's the CBCT training, but it also looks like that they have to have this change or this embodiment of self-compassion in order for their depression to get better. And then this is my most recent study that I conducted in the fall of 2016. And this was with college students, and we gave CBCT over 10 weeks, and one group got CBCT, and then the other group got what's called usual care. I mean, we didn't instruct them to do anything any different than what they normally do. We did give them the opportunity to get CBCT after the study was over because we believe it's that beneficial. So we measured before and after the intervention, and we looked at several domains here. So we looked at depressive symptoms and stress. We looked at self-regulation, which includes emotional regulation and mindfulness. This mindfulness scale has two subscales, one that's awareness and one that's acceptance. And then I gave a cognitive task which measured attention, sustained attention actually, and executive function. And executive function is a necessary part of our ability to function on a daily basis. It is allows one to plan, to keep things in memory, to follow directions. Our executive function is basically just a term that we use to say that the brain is working well. So your brain is working better if you have higher executive function. I don't want to get too much into this, but what I just kind of wanted to make a point here visually. So on the left side, you will see that was the control group's measure before and after CBCT. On the right side is the intervention. I've placed a red line down both sides here. If the line crosses that red line, that means there was no change, no statistically significant change. And as you can see in the control group, every one of those horizontal lines cross that red line, meaning there's no change. In the intervention group, you can see that most of the lines, except for stress and depression and non-acceptance up there on the self-regulation scale, cross the line. So it looked like after the 10 weeks that the intervention group actually had changes in their ability to self-regulate, in mindfulness, and attention and executive function. That was very exciting to me, that their brain started, it looked like was starting to work better after they did CBCT.
Slides not available, so that's why. So can we?
Okay, I'm going to keep going. So this slide you cannot see, but what we did find is once we started to separate people into high and low stress groups, so we talked about that CBCT was supposed to buffer stress, so it seemed natural to look at depression based upon their stress level when they entered the study. And lo and behold, what we found is that people that came into the study that had high stress, that they had a significant decrease in their depressive symptoms. This is really important because depressive symptoms are very debilitating to people. They have a hard time functioning, going to work, maintaining relationships. It affects all areas of their life. So to be able to lessen those symptoms is really important, because people get to feeling better and they can do all the things that they would like to do in life. So something else we began to explore, which again, we don't have a really great grasp on this as far as dose. So when I say dose, what I mean is how long people are meditating and to what degree they're engaging in CBCT is necessary for them to have a benefit. And so what we found is that decreases in depressive symptoms that were substantial was related to their total in-class meditation time, as well as the number of classes that they attended. Not every person attended all classes, but those that attended more classes and did more in-class meditation had more a greater reduction in depressive symptoms. We also saw improvements in acceptance on the mindfulness scale, and that was related to total in-class meditation, as well as their outside class meditation or independent practice was related to the improvement in sustained attention and executive function. So it seems that the key for improvements in attention and executive function was really their practice time outside their CBCT class. And I just have this picture again to remind us that stress and depression, stress can lead to depression and other issues with the body, and that is the reason why we took those people with the high stress group and really looked at them, because they seem to be the ones that could have a lot of benefit related to depression. Okay, so I consider these findings early as a scientist. I consider these findings very early. So what it looks like that CBCT is doing across studies is that it can decrease the stress response. If we have better or improved well-being. I want to say that I have not gone over every single study of CBCT. I tried to take several studies so you could get a picture of what was going on. Looks like there's an improvement in mood, improved interpersonal skills, including things like empathy, improved in the number and consistency of friendships. This was a study I didn't talk about, but this was with children, that they made more friends. And they had more friends after CBCT and maintained those. That this can be implemented at a younger level, meaning in elementary school, that we were able to give the protocol at that young age group. And we also saw improvements, as I just described, in self-regulation, attention, and executive function. And I'm just going to end here with a quote from Albert Einstein. And I don't know if it is translated. It's not. So I'm going to read it so you can hear it. A human being is part of the whole, called by us, quote, universe, a part limited in time and space. We experience ourselves, our thoughts and feelings, as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from the prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures in the whole of nature in its beauty. The true value of a human being is determined by the measure and the sense in which they have attained liberation from self. We shall require a substantially new manner of thinking if humanity is to survive. Albert Einstein, as well as Charles Darwin, lived a very long time ago. And I think we are just now in the West getting this message. So I think that concludes my talk. Thank you so much for your attention, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
Doctor, I want to ask one question. You are talking about strategy, therapies. So can you share a little bit more about the sessions which you had and what they did during these sessions, so that we can say therapy has these sessions and these activities really help to improve their well-being physically as well as psychologically? Thank you.
So sure, I'd be happy to talk about that, but something I need to say as a caveat is that this is not considered therapy. Dr. Nagy would say this is not therapy. This is mind training. It's beneficial, but it's not a therapy. As a scientist, I say this is very promising. We can't say it's a therapy, but it's CBCT. CBCT, yes. So it's not a therapy. It is a training. Okay. But we're excited about it. It could be maybe in the future. Great. Or something. Okay, so the question was, what are they doing in these modules? So I talked a little bit about the nurturing moment, which is the first module. The second module is attentional stability. So if you're going to begin to, I feel like I'm speaking to the choir here, but you have to stabilize the mind first before you can begin to get into analytical meditation. So for attentional stability, the way this has been translated for us in America is to focus on the breath and to begin to notice when your attention deviates from focusing on your breath. So you're focusing on your breath, and then you're saying, oh, my mind is wandering, and you bring it right back to the breath. The second module, okay. The second module is an open monitoring type of meditation, and I'm trying to remember the name of the module. I'm going to see if I can get that slide back up here. It's an open meditation in which you're just looking at what is going on with your mind. You're just an observer, and you're just seeing the activity in which you're actually not getting entangled in it at all. You're just observing, and you're noticing that you don't have to respond to things in your mind. You can just watch it. You don't have to act upon it. And you're just trying not to become entangled. And you're starting then to begin to recognize patterns that are coming up over and over again as you're watching your mind. In the third module, where are the modules? Looking. In the third module is self-compassion. So that's where you are looking at focusing that people and all people have limitations, and that we are all have unique limitations and then shared limitations, and that we need to be compassionate to ourselves before we can begin to extend compassion to others. I'm giving you a very abbreviated version of this. This goes much deeper, but I'm giving you a very abbreviated version. On the fourth module, it will help me if I can, there we go, okay. So what I just talked about was the self-compassion module. The third module is cultivating impartiality, and this is looking at people as all the same, and that we're all alike, and the fact that we want happiness, and we want to eliminate suffering, right? We don't want to have to go through that unless we just have to. And so you start to look during the analytical part of the meditation. It actually starts with the self-compassion meditation. That's when you move from the open monitoring to the analytical meditation. The cultivating impartiality is when you begin to look at people, how you've placed people in categories of friend, adversary, and neutral. And you start to notice the feelings of how you feel when you are thinking about the happiness or versus the suffering of another, and what category they are in, and sort of your feelings or responses to that during meditation. And you try to begin to extend that to those that are in the neutral category and those that are in the adversary category. And you begin to also understand this CBCT is shifting the way that you view the world, and it's about gaining insight, and the meditation helps you to gain the insight. And so for the cultivating impartiality, you look also and say that people are in different groups now, but that could change like by the end of the day, or someone was used to be my friend but now they're not. So you kind of examine that. And then the appreciation and affection for others. This is when you focus on how everything that that you have is really related to, something that another person has given you. So for me, that might be an education. That's something that I value, and I had lots of people along the way, including great teachers and people that I don't even know that helped me. And so you focus on appreciation and affection for others, and in the web of interdependence, and how we are needing others in order to survive, and that we have an appreciation and affection, and we begin to feel that in our heart. And then the last module is empathy and engaged compassion, and that is the idea that because you have this tenderness or appreciation for not only those that are close to you, but those that you may not even know, that you begin to be able to understand or are attuned to their suffering, and then can just voluntarily extend engaged compassion. And this is all done from module 3 to 6 is all from analytical meditation.
Thank you very much.
코랑기 닝제께서들랑 오신바나 마신바니 발라 디자상 캬바라고 자상 닝제께서 지어라 어디랑 오신바지 소소 오신바지다 마신바니 발라 캬발 간을 지자이었나 디게 되어로.
So you talked about compassion towards the other subject may be known to you or unknown to you. So what is the difference? For the others, you have compassion, right?
Yes.
So you feel compassionate towards others. So one side you talked about the known, and the other one is the unknown.
That's right.
So can you tell about the difference?
So for compassion for unknown, maybe the person in America, when I'm driving down the street and they're in the car next to me, that my well-being and their well-being is precious, and so is mine. And so the idea to begin to see their well-being as something that is precious and valued, and actually we depend on the well-being of others for our own survival. And so thinking about being able to extend that compassion to people we don't even know.
닝제 계주라 디 아니 소소다 신라도 탄다 신라도 직배주 샤와나 탄다 모라당 외도 갑소스 아니 미신지 모라 신바시나 요아이나스 다 지단기 커리어라오네 신기 촌에다 디 소소이 촌에 체도 안 파주기 대당라 삼로당 당라나 다 소소랑기 시신베 당기 요마디네 파 칼리칼리 마캬브에 주라 직니 신라 캬브에 딘데 용구요레스.
Yes.
진저기 니제 고양이 냐레 쪼데 가르레 진저기 니제 고양이 냐레 쪼 가르치고레 니제 고양이 냐레 쪼데 가르치.
So when you practice compassion, so what is the main thing you focus about?
The main
Thing that you focus on, yeah. To practice compassion.
Self-compassion or compassion for others?
냠 탄다 닝제 라디 탄다 랑니라 탄다 닝제 주라 랑니라 제동 주라 디체 예나 신라 닝제 게 컨디시 유스 닝제 컨딜 송유스 신라 compassion towards others.
Compassion towards others. So for me, I live in a pretty fast-paced world over in America, and so sometimes I encounter difficult people or find that I'm maybe wanting something and someone is blocking, me from getting that. And so to begin to really look at the multiple realities as well as me not becoming too attached to those wants. They're not needs, they're wants. So I think it is beginning to kind of for me, is to step back and look at alternative realities, I guess. And then to treat that person, to try to see where they're coming from, and to try not to be upset with them because I think they're being difficult, but to be compassionate, like that they may be going through something and that's the reason why they're acting that way, or they may be frightened or fearful. And so to begin to then sort of find that softness in my heart to understand that I know what it's like to be frightened and fearful, and maybe that's what's going on. So to be able to see things differently in my daily interactions.
Tangarando chashana ari lungbal didita tela subsu shucha de res lungbadi dilla deni shen la thanda ningje ke la dita thangbo di thanda ma cha bele ra dil shishani ko chue ro chagyo res an thana shi ni mi shimba dinzo khandes kangi khande nyong de mi soso le nyang yo na shi phaju de nyong yo ngoyo ni si khari ba di thola ni thonang chi go dige ke chumbu chag dos
닝지 들라고랑이 아니 신라 닝지 기주지다 라니라 아니 닝지 기주 니셔다 아니 소설레 아니 라니라 닝지 기주데니 코랑원에 간데스 샤기 아니 코랑원에 닝지 기주데니 간데스 디 지기 닝지 기주 코랑 소설 라니.
So you have talked about self-compassion and compassion towards others. So what do you consider something as self-compassion? So what do you mean by that?
So what I mean by self-compassion is I'm pretty hard on myself. And so what I mean by that is I need to understand that there are multiple factors that go into the outcomes of things. And for some reason, this is something that I'm like, the world is not completely under my control. And for Western people in America, I think a lot of times we are very attached to the outcome. And I need to understand, at least for self-compassion, that I'm responsible for my effort, and 100% of my effort, and that the outcome is dependent upon many, many factors, many in which I cannot control.
Tatanda rangi la ningji la na zedong shejura di ani tanda ke mangbuji la raligu res ani ta chidang gi sheo na tanda khari bai na ngarangi tangjing wala digiyo maras nedang hande ji sheo na susu tangjing o digiyo mares ani thagana shi ni jugde khari yungme dila ani chani de jura dinde mai bache ani susu rangi gi ta kale gen dumde khari thumba de susu rangi gi gench chagiyo dige samlo na shagu res ani thana shi dumde khari chungu yome di susu rangi la ra ligyo res ti chibu mares an thana shi ke mangbujil tagu res jugde di khari thop yome di
so mi yela nje ga da sinji janso no busen thomot sala nje ga pala cheba ka yere chiba nje ga da chiba re de cheba yere
khari la
mi yela nje ga da
So, is there any difference that you feel compassion towards humans, and when you feel compassionate towards the living creatures which is in the ocean or sea? Is there any difference between these two compassions?
I think if you're asking, are they asking me personally? For me personally?
Yeah.
I think there is, but it's species dependent. So I'm very compassionate and attached to my dog. I shared that with the nuns when we had our tea party. But if there was a spider up here earlier before we started, and it was very difficult for me to be compassionate for the spider because it scared me. So I would have to say yes.
Ngarang ger gicha shawana da lendi gyawana kheba yores shiyes di nyiri la nyiri kheba du yores ampe shawana thanda shuge ngara sudi chodi goma zu konla ani thomda bujdus andi la du ngara thanda ningje ke jora di khabu chas khana ni shinang ke sons di la du ni thanda nyiri kheba yore la ne kheba ngarang ger gi shawana samsu shawana yores
Gelarangi ani tanda niji gi tudela ne molasra ani mini
neba yobachira chi gelarangi pinja yimbachi ani chi pinja mewachi ani tini ni nasa ina chipa yimbachi ani gelarangi niji gi chap condition chugi is.
Okay, so if you are a doctor and you talked about the compassion, and there are two patients, for example, both are suffering from the same disease, and one is your relative and the other one is a stranger to you. So from your point of view, how will you treat these two patients?
So I am a nurse, and I have been in that situation, and most of the time I'm with patients, and they are strangers to me. And so maybe some of this I have developed with humans more easily, because I see the patient is vulnerable. And when you see someone is vulnerable, I think that's an easier, at least for me, to have compassion. So whether it's a family member or a stranger, I don't think it would change the way that I treat, because I've been in this situation before where I've had actually taken care of people that were close to me in the same time I had other patients.
아니 ngara menshap jimbe chani ani ngoma dinde nyonyo yus ancha shauna chik susu nangmi nebani yo che chik susu nangmi che ani chik mishimba jimba yo nas dinde nedang mangbo chi tenyo yis digap so ani ngara gi thanda phajola ta yalin te dan ro jora menju chi dang da di sangma le kheba soyo mares dinde nedang mangbo tenyo yani chigo jigya ta chigi yus nebani yo aina
찍면 또
Okay, so
찍면 또 겹투기면 나라 찍 수수기 니센치라 찍
So if they have, in a scenario like there are two patients, one is your family member, take for example, and the other one is a stranger, so you can save only one patient. So who do you save?
This is a very complicated question, and I don't think that I can give an answer on that, like on this stage. That's an ethical and very complicated question. I'm not sure that I can answer it.
The two the nyozin chen thiana shi sangjo da dewa chayu dus che zani thanda de dingja galang alin dikya tu samares.